Okay, we're here on the outskirts of Boulder, our last stop of the day, and we are at NIST, which is a program of the Department of Commerce. This is not the main center for NIST. That is actually in Gaithersburg, Maryland. But the center behind me, they are NIST's office for time and frequency, and they're the home of the atomic clock. And so what is an atomic clock? Well, super accurate clock. The idea, initially in the mid-19th century, this person by the name of, oh gosh, sorry, I'm gonna have to, James Clerk Maxwell. He is the father of radio electromagnetic theory. He sort of intuited that there would be a way of measuring the distance between waves of particles and then establishing time. But we didn't have control of molecules at that point, and so it was maybe a century later when the first atomic clock was attempted by Harold Lyons, and that was in 1949, and he used an ammonia molecule, but evidently, like, putting microwave radiation on this ammonia molecule wasn't actually that much better than tracking it against the stars. So they went back, and NIST counterpart in the UK, they built an atomic clock in 1955 using a molecule of cesium. So it's very interesting that cesium is also the name of the company that is doing the virtual simulations and sort of the metaverse building with NVIDIA. And we'll get to why I think that is later, but cesium, keep that in mind. So the first US cesium clock was finished in 1960, and that sort of set the time. That first clock, it had a measure of uncertainty of 1 second every 3,000 years. So that, I think that seems pretty good, but now the current NIST clock, NIST 7, evidently says it's only off by 1 second every 6 million years. So super accurate. Now, you might say, well, what would you use an atomic clock for? Why do you need that level of accuracy? Well, if you're in the blockchain space, one of the key things that they talk about in terms of crypto transactions is this idea of transactions over time from different parts of the world, that there's this tiny infinitesimal fraction of a second that someone might break in and do a double counting. So they need to have this atomic clock to sync everything up. Another main use of the clocks is the GPS coordinates. So the GPS satellites that are circulating up in space, they have tiny atomic clocks in them that are pinging us against our cell phones and all of the smart things, and they're all in sync. And they have to be kept in sync, or the augmented reality layer, the digital layer of the world will start to fall apart and fragment and not work, because it all has to be coordinated, or else we'll like end up like the Philadelphia experiment or something, like stuck like halfway through dimensions. So they need a very precise clock. And I think that the cesium, the name of the clock and the name of the company, may be because in order for the metaverse to function, they need all of it at very precision levels, this like only losing 1 second in 6 million years. Now, I will say my first exposure to NIST, when I was doing my education research, my friend in Maine who had a blog, she talked about competency-based education that was happening in this early model in Alaska, because they always pick these out-of-the-way spots to template their programs. And they were using indigenous communities in Alaska, and they were focused on measuring a lot of things. They were measuring competencies. This is going to feed into the stackable credentials tied to EDUCAUSE that we talked about earlier. But the Chugach School District won this Baldrige Award, Malcolm Baldrige Award, for sort of superb measurement, and that was awarded by NIST. So essentially looking at children as measurements of human capital. So that was already happening. That was my first exposure. And then later I found out that they were involved in a program of digital identity for students that's really pretty much blockchain that was funded in 2012 by the National Laboratory for Education Transformation. Now, one of the other sites when we were in Austin at their high performance computing nanotechnology campus, they were doing some of that work as well. So the digital identity for education was part of NIST because they need to measure you, and they need to measure you in space. So NIST is also very central in smart cities. And my friend Raul Diego of Silicon Icarus, his blog Silicon Icarus has a wonderful article about all the elements of NIST's involvement in smart city technology space. And again, it's about communicating sensor networks, geolocation positioning, your position in relation to the sensors, and the sensors all talking to each other. And that all requires measurements and standards. So look into that, that's very important. And then finally, I want to say that in addition to the blockchain education space, they're working on blockchain medical records. And so in 2016, they were part of a program to work on blockchain systems for health. Now, one more thing, NIST is also involved in setting the measurements for the nanotechnology space, the National Nanotechnology Initiative, because what we're talking about essentially is molecular engineering. And to my mind, this keeps going back to Pixar, Pixars and pixels and atomic level, molecular level engineering and molecules and nanostructures. The magicians who are playing around in the nanospace, making these hybrid materials as their new creations, are not so dissimilar from the Disney Pixar animators playing with pixels and making their creations. And it's all this sort of spectrum of molecular design. But NIST is the one that is setting standards for the nanotech space. So I just want to kind of close by saying, oh, one last thing. Michael Hruska, H-R-U-S-K-A, of Problem Solutions, he developed XAPI technology, TinCan API, with this defense contractor in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. He was a researcher at NIST between 2000 and 2004, so it's all connected. But just in closing today, because the temperature is dropping and we are freezing, I just want to say, well, it's time, right? And we sort of feel like a lot of us, since the lockdowns began 2 years ago, and we've been thrown into this alternative reality, that time sometimes goes really fast and sometimes goes really slow. In the simulated worlds that they're developing, they're going to be going fast and slow, and I feel like we need to figure out how to navigate these realities of time. And it keeps coming back to me, Madeleine L'Engle's book, A Wrinkle in Time, the children's book, where Meg is trying to find her father, who is trapped in this technocratic space by the AI, and she and her brother Charles Wallace go. And Charles Wallace gets taken in by the AI, and really at the end of that, love is what wins. Love is what wins the day. So time is central to our concept, and frequency. And our frequencies as bioelectric beings, not in the thing that they're building with the atomic clock satellites in space, but literally within our heart space and our mind space to care for one another and the world.